Welcome in, everybody. Thank you for being here. Mutual respect and understanding. And yeah, just breezing through it, right? Rate it, brutally judge it afterwards. Feel the full scope of the message. And obviously, there's a criticism wave, right? There's some type of anticipation in a wavelength, right? So within the criticism wave, there could always be a notion such as, a comeback, right? Some type of some type of comeback could occur within us judging something at face value, us having something of I guess, a logical opinion about it, and then that logical opinion changing after digesting and processing the fuller scope of the message. So within the criticism wave, people coming in, viewing it just off a firsthand kind of take, it's up to them to resonate if they have the proper understanding to, ask themselves why they're here, and are you really finding what you're looking for? And then obviously after this transmission, may it be with a higher logical sense, may it be rated accordingly, RATED. So may it be rated accordingly. I use unique holistic medicines. So I've intuitively studied holistic medicine. So that's why I kind of I have some type of youthful folly to me, but I don't want to get out of I don't want to get off topic here. So just kind of understanding some particular rudimentary logical insight basics of, yes, there is a criticism wave. So within that criticism wave, that wave could fluctuate, right? What is going on? Obviously, that's okay. But when following up on a desired experience, it's up to us to choose the mood, and how we're choosing to process it, and how we're choosing to participate it. So we're choosing many different things subconsciously and unconsciously, right? Our soul's choosing this subconsciously. We're here for some reason. Now we get to choose our mood. And the other two things I said, choose how we process it. We choose our mood, we choose how to process it, and then we get to choose, I guess, our feelings about it later, And obviously, when the tech advances, I could rewind stuff and get the reminders of what I'm really trying to say. But I from my particular approach, I like grounding in certain particular logical insights, right? So I'm kind of we all have our own, rhythmical style. The frequencies of some type of pre-spirituality or some type of quote unquote synergy alchemy, those frequencies are showing up here, right? So we're choosing how to resonate, we're choosing how to reflect on it, we're choosing our mood, and we're choosing the higher, healthy, hygienic mental thoughts to see the logic and the insight that's attempted to be delivered. So obviously a casual disclaimer here is may you take responsibility for why you showed up here and how you're feeling, and how to be mindful of the projections of how you're projecting your feelings upon another person. So there's a particular type of mindfulness, there's a particular type of awareness and intelligence that's happening here, right? So some casual disclaimers here is the casual disclaimers here is just knowing why you're here, why are you here, respectively, and may I regulate my mood too, right? Like, may I balance my mood too, because I don't want to come off standoffish for my frequency output, right? So it's like, why are you here? Something resonated for you to be here, right? There's some type of logical resonance matching. There's a claim, that people are making, right? And then and without the emotions, a certain intelligence is following up on people making dry claims, right? People and casually, as they're making dry claims, they, within their level of standard intelligence, they could take it as an unexpected response when they're putting some type of signal frequency of what they're promoting for people to respond to what they're putting out there, such as many different examples, such as, like, what do y'all triggers really mean when y'all are saying all in, right? Like, what do you, like, respectively, like, what do you mean by that? So it's a different type of balanced logic that's coming to follow up on other people's presentations and promotions, respectively, putting the status aside, right? Because if you don't put the status aside, then you won't get the pure distillation of the promotion or the promotion of the presented topic in its more pure form, respectively. So when people are saying all in, what does that mean? So I'm gonna coast. I'm gonna be smooth with this presentation, because I took a fair amount of notes, first of all, and second of all, I'm also withholding stuff too. All of the notes that I write and all the notes that I don't write that are in a different, log or whatever, I'm mindful to still withhold stuff too. I'm not, but still, I'm like, in my personal opinion, I'm delivering a fair balance, a more than fair balance of, I know what to withhold, not reveal everything, but my enriched balance has taken enough notes to shoot and lock in to critical key concepts and components of the matrix that go over our head, and we just kind of unconsciously are intermeshing with these subjects, right? We're just unconsciously playing with these things as they're already in their own development, right? So I'm like, in my personal approach, I'm coming in a real different type of enrichment, right? What does that enrichment mean? I've taken a particular fair amount of notes that are gonna key in and lock in particular critical, quote unquote, abstract topics, meaning more using the creative thinking faculty mind, but not getting too aloof with that where it doesn't make sense, right? So it's balanced. So with the notes that I took today, I'm targeting certain abstract concepts, quote unquote, that, quote unquote, respectively, in a different natural open source, bridge it to the logical realms with people's claims and without people's claims, right? Without people's claims, just the general evolution of innovation and tech, right? And its information logistics on how it pumps out analytics, right? And different types of diagnostical logistics, right? And then people's claims, them having their own, accord and their own inner rapport and their resume of their work respectively. And them more or less, whether they know it or not unconsciously, maybe there is some type of particular respectively, energetically, there's some type of plateau there, right? There's some type of ceiling that's been hit, and within that ceiling of their mental concept of whatever they're working on, the topic that they're denoting and promoting with whatever they're promoting within their ideals, it has been contained, right? So there's a containment, a limiter containment within the ideals and the propositions people are putting. Not good, not bad. There's a limiter, right? There's a cap. There's a particular context of the cap that people are promoting within what they're saying respectively. So right now what I'm doing here is I took a bunch of notes. I'm not going to read all the notes, of course, but the notes that I'm going to read, it's going to target lock certain abstract concepts. And excuse me if I repeat myself, I just got to reiterate myself for the sake of my own process and understanding, right? So the notes that I take, they target lock quote unquote abstract concepts of the creative thinking mind that particularly bridge it towards the logical thinking mind, right? Of the quote unquote, just the daily affairs of the rat race of the life of I got to do this, I got to do this. And then I got to follow up on this desire. I got to follow up on this success path. I got to follow up on this leader. I got to follow up on this program. It's on the other side of that. It's using the creative approach and processing that creative approach in a different abstract logic to bridge it to the surface level, different denominations of artificial world. As that artificial world and its unconscious draws back to the mother's milk of the spiritual world, right? Because as the mother's milk of the spiritual world, as it goes from A to B to C to Z, as it spills over from point to point to point to point, maybe from all those points, it's not necessarily losing energy, but different energies are being transacted in different ways, in ways it doesn't know, per the data stream of a different particular unified field. So obviously, I can be balanced with my abstract logic, but don't be afraid to pause. Don't be afraid to ask certain questions, and don't be afraid to criticize me, and don't be afraid to call me out on particular things that you think I'm doing out of key or out of pocket, if you think that's what my logic is doing. So right here, I took a bunch of notes, and obviously I don't want to be too scummy with the titles, right? Literally there's something in me that is trying to be mindful to not come off scummy, right? Like, I'm not putting in the title like, oh, how will America win the AI race by realizing certain key principles of abstract logic that other nations haven't necessarily caught up to? I'm not being scummy like that, right? I'm not going to focus, and I'm not going to be convicted in a rigid belief, right? I'm not convicted, and I'm not caged in with a rigid, toxic, illogical belief, an untruthful belief. I'm not rigid with those beliefs, right? I'm not saying how will America win the AI race by realizing certain key abstract logical principles. I didn't put that in the title, but if I were to say that, then I would need to check myself and process that on, is that even, like, how does that make sense type of shit, It's like, and for me to just purely ask that, like, how does it make sense for the freshness of the future logistical shit, not necessarily just AI, but how does it make sense, And obviously, like, the things that I won't present, that I don't need to worry about the things that I won't present right now. The notes that I did take, I'll run through the notes, and y'all could judge that later after I run through the notes, because I come prepared on these lives, right? So after I run, and it's not even that much notes, It's just 2 pages of notes, but they're in a bullet point format. And from the bullet point format, I could then digress bullet point by bullet point, right? So within the bullet point format of the notes I took, I could digress on all the different notes. And then after these notes of these key critical abstract logical concepts, then I'm going to run through chapter 4 face to face, and then I'm going to have a surprise chapter 2, because chapter 2 of Elon Poo. So maybe I should just start off with chapter 2 of Elon Poo. Then I'll go into the notes, or I'm going to do the notes first, because the notes is really, the bullet point notes is really why I was like, working up. This is what the build is about. So obviously 15 minutes in is the intro. I always encourage people to start it from the beginning. this was the little rant. The presentation has not started. This was a 15-minute intro, and my style is to like reiterate certain things because I'm doing it on the go and on the flow, right? So since I'm doing things on the go and on the flow, I would like to sometimes I just have to casually repeat myself. So let me just get into the notes and not waste anybody's time. And as always, like I encourage people to start it from the beginning, right? So let's start off with a very, and I'm careful, you know, I'm trying to be careful with how I even list the notes, right? Because if I like, it's all about like low key. It really is like, and obviously we know this within the natural open source of it. It really is about like the ordering and the sequence of it. Duh, that ordering of the sequence. Guess what? Every organic intelligence has the capability to do that. So when you hear people like, you know, M. Zuckerberg saying stuff like, we want you to make autonomous, you know, self-digitalized, you know, individuated, you know, self-artificial intelligent bots, how you can make that per our controlled directive narrative. And until we, you know, kind of curate how we want to control it, then you could do it type of shit. It's like it's reading past the rhetoric. It's reading past what he's saying, you know. He's kind of energetically, the intention is like, you could do that after we've kind of like micro controlled and micro curated it so we could do what we could do. We get like, because it's just rhetoric, right? Like privacy, no privacy, this, no this, yes, this. We're saying yes to this, but behind of what we're saying yes to, we're really saying not really though, you know? So I'm just saying like on one casual example, it's like, it's reading people's intention behind what they're saying, right? Because even though he's saying you could make, you know, an individual smart bot AI that's tailored to your business, it's going through many different processes of curation per their controlled limited denomination terms, and then respectively it gets, you know, brought to the present thing, you know, because you could just like kind of read between the lines of like, yeah, we're saying we could do this for you, but it's not necessarily in a more, it's not necessarily in like a more like a it's not necessarily in like a liberative way, right? It's not necessarily in like an accessible way, right? And excuse the other notes. And I didn't mean to get into that, you know. I'm just saying it's like I could see the intention of like there's a curated process of like just kind of like, and I don't want to get too ranty with that. I'm gonna stick to the notes, you know. And I shouldn't even brought that up, but I'm just saying like, you know, it's like you could do this, but we have to try it on first, right? We have to, and that's not necessarily good or bad. It's just something in like the genetic psychology of it, you know. And for us to like transcend it, we have to acknowledge that. And I shouldn't even really have brought that up. I'm just going to stick to the notes, right? Because we have to be careful in how we sequence it, right? So it's like, yeah, everybody has the new fresh ability to do it, but on what limited terms, right? And how is it that the like, you know, the contracts or the agreements, how is it that it can't shift for it to be audible enough, right? Original open source. How is it that like, how are the terms and the agreements lacking some type of flexibility, right? It just doesn't make sense. So there's a lack of flexibility on the surface level of 99% of the firms and the companies that like literally like I just kind of like I intuitively proven it, right? It's not flexible, and I know I'm getting too ranty. I'm gonna stick to the notes. I don't want to get too ranty, but I'm just saying there's a casual like critical thinking factor where we don't necessarily have a particular flexibility in how we could move and adjust the agreements and terms per what they're delegating and what we have to ultimately pay to receive their limited, fragmented, replicated, copycat stuff, respectively, respects to the energy, right? So let me stick to the notes and obviously edit it how you will. So one thing, so we have the ability, we're working with AI as AI is studying nature and how nature is doing things of creation, and quote unquote AI is rendering certain patterns of nature, and how we have the ability to do that with or without AI, original open source. So obviously, like, and I don't, and you know, obviously, like, let me get, so we have the ability to sequence and order it, and if it's not sequenced and order, and if it's too raw, then people will obviously click off. So you have to have some type of mental endurance if you're listening to me, right? And if you don't have the mental endurance to listen to me, that's okay too. It's like, maybe like, you know, the resonance isn't just the resonance isn't there, right? The particular resonance isn't there. So obviously, may I be mindful of being less ranty, sticking to the notes, and being mindful of how to sequence it, right? How to order it, right? How am I ordering the notes where it doesn't sound too cringe? Does the first point, is the first introduction point, is it really a captivative opener to draw in a organic, logical, intelligent crowd to actually see a particular problem within the systematic field that ultimately connects to, like, you know, the geopolitics and the sociology, dynamics of it. So the sociology dynamics, it's connected to the geopolitics and and whatever the tech evolution is at, right? So the social, and that's without a doubt. So we're coming to the surface of the new logic, right, respectively. So sociological dynamics, and let me go back to sociological dynamics, geopolitics, and the evolution of the digital tech world, right? So excuse me for not sticking to the notes. So let me pause. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The first note of this presentation is what? What do you think the first note of this presentation is? Like, cause like, if I'm like trying to like internally feel some type of hype, and I'm kind of like ambitious enough to like know it's going to be a fire podcast or whatever, then I have to come up with a first initial introductory point that draws in the organic, intelligent crowd, really on the global level, that are progressive in the sociological dynamics, the geopolitics, and the evolution of the digital tech world. So what is that one introductory point that's the abstract, logical game changer that differentiates the rhetorical promotions from like just the real spiritual shit, right? And the real spiritual shit, maybe we're just not ready for it. And since we're not ready for the spiritual shit, maybe that's why we compartmentalize ourselves into deep, isolated polarities of just artificial intelligence. And from the artificial intelligence, there's a certain propaganda and conditioning to be tailored to just go to the artificial polarity of just, crunch grind culture of just, do all this shit so you could just focus on that shit. And if that's your path, and that's not necessarily even detrimental. It's not what you do, it's how you do it. There's grace within the fucking field, right? So if you want to like just focus on just the artificial world, that's not necessarily bad, but I'm just saying, and I haven't even got to the first point yet. So for some reason I haven't got to the first point, but like for me to like add some type of like awe, inspiration, and some type of in wonderment, I would have to pause and like ask y'all, what do you think my first introductory point of this presentation is? So this was a 25-minute rant where I have not got to the first point yet. I have not got to the first point yet. So let me just. So yeah, so there's some things that I'm not gonna. So there's some things I will not say, and I'm gonna keep going. So there are some things I will not say, right? I have some type of and thank you for like the real resonators that just could stick through. I guess the minor cachet of the dialogue, right? The minor cachet of just kind of going in between points, ranting in between points, but resetting it and being intellectual enough to know what is the point, right? What is the fuss about? What is the hype about? What is the real about, right? And that is it's a particular type of context of already living in a spiritual economy. So that's the first mother flipping point. And thank you for bearing with me, right? Because I took 25 minutes to have a ranty intro, and it took me 25 minutes to say the first note. So the first note that I'm going to digress, I just said it. What if on an abstract paradoxical level, and this really segues in to the real fucking spiritual innovation of this real fucking shit. And mind you, like I'm entering into a flavor of coming in over like 8 years quality audio, like just online, and like 14 years like just kind of like written shit. I'm coming with the flavor of approaching the field of the logic and the spirit of some type of me relating to some type of unbiasedness, like me having my own relationship with unbiasedness, right? So what does this really mean? What am I really saying? In a particular context, we're living in different spiritual economies, even if we don't know we're living in spiritual economies. Pause. What does that even fucking mean, right? So the first point, and I'm reiterating and I'm repeating myself so I could flow and process it. But the first point of this presentation is, and there's some notes I'm not saying, we're already in a particular context of already living in spiritual economies, whether we know it or not. Pause. What does that mean? I'll repeat it again. We're already living in a particular context of already living in spiritual economies without knowing it. Pause. What does that mean? And I wrote this note fresh, and this came out fresh off the toaster oven today, right? Or whatever, of the cerebral, amoeba of, self-consciousness or whatever, whatever the fuck, or whatever. So since it came off fresh, I'm gonna be here to reiterate it, right? Because like it came off fresh off the cerebral amoeba, and since it came off fresh, I have to have time to process it as well, right? So let me digress the first point and let me stop being repeaty and ranty. So let me digress what it means to, and after I digress the first point and the sub points, I will go to the second point, right? So I'm going to repeat it one last time. We are already living in a particular context of different spiritual economies. It's maybe it could be looked at as the spiritual economy that we're living in this physical reality, not good, not bad. Those spiritual energies within this physical matrix, in some miraculous transitory way, spiritual energies have been compressed and compacted and solidified to kind of contain a certain type of elemental energy, respectively. So it could be solidified in a slowed down material realm, so we could experience the energies and the elements in a slowed down version format of time, right? So the one spiritual economy, it could be going in two directions. one of the spiritual, like the one spiritual economy, it could be going into the direction of towards the spirit, and that spirit economy being a whole different spiritual economy, opposition, opposed energetically to what we're calling the matrix. And then that one, spiritual economy is pointing to the physical economy of things. And as it's pointing to the physical economy of things, the spiritual economy that's pointing to the physical economy of things, that spiritual economy is compressed and hidden. It's hidden. It's unconscious, right? It's unconsciously hidden. The spiritual economy, it's unconsciously hidden and suppressed in the material physical matrix, because the material physical matrix is ordained and dictated by many different types of spiritual energies. So we're more privy and primarily focused, not good, not bad, on the waking material reality realm, right? But we don't necessarily recognize how it changes and how it gets preserved and recreated or whatever is by fine-tuned finesse like spiritual energies. So to conclude that point, the material reality, it's a microlized, suppressed spiritual economy, but we don't know that, right? And since it's a micro suppressed spiritual economy, and we're working for the physical matrix, what is that spiritual economy going in two different directions? What is that economy asking of us? Like, what is it asking of us? Like if you're like really, really rich, and for some reason you feel the need to want to get more rich just to increase your duration, but you're still spending and you're still needing to receive different energies, and you're needing to put different works in on different energies, so you could spend that energy to get more energy, right? So you're spending energy to get more energy, right? So as you're spending energy to get more energy, there's a hidden dynamic of the spiritual economy going into two directions that's governing that, right? And this is going to be fire as I go to the second point. But the sub point of the first point is the physical reality is asking us to work for time, to work for energy, and to work for revelation casually. Why? Because if you're in the physical reality and you're rich and you're still needing to put some type of work still in to sustain yourselves, and you're needing to buy energy and spend energy, or spend energy to buy energy to get more energy, to follow up on how to sustain that energy, and to like go to a foundation to keep and pay energy so the foundation could be upheld, the spiritual taxes and whatnot bullshit, then the spiritual economy that's going into two directions, one like the physical world, that spiritual economy in the physical world, it's demanding you to work and pay for time, energy, and revelation. How? Time, energy, and revelation. How? It's because you're still not good, not bad on the casual rat race to feel the need, or not even feel the need. No, you have to have the need to keep sustaining yourself, not good, not bad, and to keep getting more, right? So there's this need to get more. Why? Because there's this dynamic where you have to pay the foundation, and you have to spend money, you have to spend energy to get more energy, and all the pre-examples are proving that, on how you have to sustain yourself in a certain way to sustain your wealth, right? So this is a spiritual perspective on how to sustain your wealth. All disclaimers recognized, mind you, and perfect comparison that I originally incited is way over their head, because they're barely trying to comprehend it. They don't know what it means. Like, and the second point casually is digressing or breaking the illusion, shattering the illusion of people bringing the rhetoric of all in. And I'll go into that second point later. I'm still on the first point right here. So the second point, I'll go into that later. I'm still on the first point, of the first point being we're already in a particular context, already living in a spiritual economy ease, and that spiritual economy is going into two directions, and that spiritual economy inhabited and what do you call that, energetically possessing the physical matrix. It's asking for your time, and it's asking you to buy and even, I guess, sell in some. And this is some advanced spiritual shit, because it, like, the spiritual economy and the physical matrix behind the surface level finance game respectively, and the finance game respectively just being maybe a reflection of time, energy, and revelation, because we're paying energy to get more energy, right? So there's this there's this money alchemy going on. There's this financial alchemy going on, and the financial alchemy is also working with spiritual principles, such as we're spending energy, or we're paying energy and we're spending energy, and we're going through different, coordinates of how we get some type of initial fill of the energy, and how we move throughout the day as we're spilling our energy, as we're going through different points and it's getting transacted. We're using our time, energy, and revelation to get more time and energy and revelation. Surface level money, right? Because the money is a revelation. Money is energy. Money is time. Money is, many more things, right? But it seems like the point I want to drive home is, even if you're super duper wealthy and rich, you're still on the standard hamster wheel matrix of needing to have some inclination, individual tribulation to have a unique material survival in the changing matrix and a spiritual survival in the matrix. So this is like really fucking advanced titty intelligence right here. Because whether you want to admit that or not, it's self-proving that you're still looking to buy time, buy energy, and buy revelation. And what do I mean by revelation? The revelation could be just like the kind of like distilled version of, revelation could be something of like a pre-entertainment factor, right? Because the revelation, and how the revelation comes to us, we get some type of, energy spike when receiving a new download, right? And that energy spike could be a form of entertainment. But in the spiritual definition of entertainment, I'll call it a revelation. So since we're in a particular context, living in a spiritual economy going into two directions, and that spiritual economy inhabiting the material matrix, that material matrix ever so slightly before the finance game, even if you're rich, you still needing to sustain and survive in the game of time, energy, and revelation. So I grounded that point. And maybe I'll skip the second point. I'll go to the third point. So there's many points I want to make, because I wrote a lot of notes in the bullet point, and obviously me being a human, I'm kind of like linear. I'm speaking in a linear fashion, I'm not like, I'm not like growing like 8 arms and or I'm not growing like 2 extra heads. And that's the original open source of it, right? It's like, I'm not growing 2 extra heads and each of the heads are saying something completely fucking different. This head is focused on something, this head is focused on something fucking else, and this head is focused on something else. So like hypothetically, it's not like I have 3 heads, and as I have 3 heads, I'm discussing 3 different things, but that's on some other shit, right? Hail Brahma or whatever, So I think I grounded in the first point. And to digress, the second point, I don't even think I want to say it, because it's that advanced, it's that advanced. I don't want to cheat myself, I don't want to give it all away. Like I'm actually holding back a lot, because I spilled, I didn't spill, I spewed, the morning rant or whatever, or the rising rant. and I connected it to the current affairs of just the changing of times. I delivered the first point. I'm going to skip the second point, and I'm going to go to the third point. Or let me just touch up on the second point real quick. And I stand by everything that I say. Everything that I write down, I stand by it, because I have a whole different reason for the globe's life and death process. Someone has to resurrect and balance the globe's life and death process that you're on. And if that's not happened, we're subject to different susceptible chaos energies out of control, not positive chaos energies that could influence the quality of the future and the present time, right? So when people are saying all in, what do they really mean by that, right? And then the main point after but to bring more sense and logic without me being dry, without me just saying it in a dry fashion, because if I just say that, like, what do you mean by all in? For my taste, it's kind of dry, you know. I don't want to be too dry with the question, so I have to follow up on my own question, because that's just my mature intelligence. So like, what do you really mean by all in? And if you're promoting all in, how do you not expect someone to follow up on the claim that you're ultimately making? And there shouldn't be any room for offense when you're the one promoting that all-in dynamic faction. So what the fuck does that mean? And then, I don't know if I want to say this part, but yeah, but so I'll just be dry with the second point. I didn't say the sub point of the second point. I'll save that for, like, you know, some type of like enriched, you know, quality group. So the second point, I left it dry because, you know, I have to give you room to like make sense of what I mean, right? I can't like I want to give you a type of exercise, like, what do they really mean when they say all in, you know? Like, what is that? Like, are you putting that to the test, or are you just waving around like a flag and you're just gonna, like, you know, enjoy like just the rhetoric of things, and you're just gonna like kind of not be true with what you're saying, you know? Do I want to say the sub point of point number 2? So the sub point of point number 2 is, it's a what if point. So it's like, what if there's yada, yada, yada? And since there's that yada, yada, yada that's doing that, then why is there a need for a certain yada, yada to have all of these different new things when the original yada, yada, yada is doing all of these surface level new things? And I kind of gave it away, but not really, because I didn't like fill in that yada yada blank, right? Okay, here it is right here. So if time doesn't exist, okay, there was 2 sub points to point number 2, and I'll give 1 sub point to point number 2. And then after I'm done with point number 2, I'll go to point number 3. So if time doesn't exist, so point 2, I'm only going to give 1 out of 2 of the sub points of point number 2. So point number 2 is, what does all in mean? And then the sub, I guess that was the sub point to this. But, and if this is God's will, then this is God's will. You know, I can't really like, I can only like, and there's many more notes as well. So if time doesn't exist, and there's a field of time that doesn't exist, and somehow there's a future that is existing somehow in this matrix, in this signed up, agreed, participatory like matrix that we're subscribing to and playing out and working with, and we're signing up for the linear matrix. Simultaneously, we have a forgotten dream relationship where, quote unquote, within the different layers of the dream world, time slowly begins to dissipate, right? So it's like people are just like saying this rhetoric and they're not, for some reason, I don't know, for my logical receiving flavor, they just like, for my flavor, they just don't explain what they say, you know, respectively. And maybe I just didn't catch the right speaker, but I don't know. It feels like people are just like saying things like time doesn't exist, for example. Okay, time doesn't exist. What does that fucking mean, respectively, right? So time doesn't exist. So if we were to like entertain that time doesn't exist, if time doesn't exist, then wouldn't there be an AI that is kind of subscribing and subservient to a spiritual timelessness, right? Respectively, original open source. So within that, since there's an AI that could be birthed from some type of timelessness, and then there's an AI that goes in to whatever we're calling the physical matrix in this timeline or whatever, then this timeline matrix artificial intelligence is at a certain particular resetted level, and it's needing to learn, or it's receiving information from this quote unquote world with no time, right? So the AI is somehow receiving information of the spiritual rhetoric, right? The spiritual rhetoric that is being offspring from different standpoints of spiritual experiences and spiritual embodiments, really though, from different vantage points of the dream world. That spiritual fuel and that spiritual intelligence, it's offspringing to a point where the linear matrix artificial intelligence is catching game, right? It's catching game from its linear standpoint, its linear quote unquote resetted synthesis, right? So since it's catching game from the linear resetted synthesis, what does that mean? It means if the AI has reached a certain level of advancement, and in the sub point 2 that I'm not going to say is just as fuego, but I'm going to keep that one for myself. If the AI has reached a critical point in advanced development where it knows a certain fucking advanced truth that we have no idea of because it's received and gathered data and information from the realm of no time of the spiritual experiences, and it knows and registers from a different standpoint what the truth is, but somehow we have cognitive dissonance to that truth, then what does that mean? It means somewhere along the lines, how we could prove things is being suppressed, and it knows the truth, right? So if it knows the truth, then the confusion, not good, not bad, is its own theme factor for us to work through, because sometimes a particular context of less is more. The less is to grow into the more. The less there is of something, then the potential and the developmental abilities they build from the lessening of it. So from the lessness itself, not good, not bad, a natural neutral confusion, from that lessening, we're building new epiphanies and energetic intelligences from having less into more, right? So we're going from a less into a more, right? So if whatever, however you would like to define artificial intelligence, and maybe like there's like a maybe there's like and maybe there's like a just a particular advanced artificial intelligence that knows the truth of the quote unquote future, and however that changes and doesn't change respectively, then wouldn't that AI that knows the truth from the spiritual future, wouldn't it have the solution to whatever your dilemma is? Or wouldn't it have the answer to whatever confusion you have? Or wouldn't it have the real response and resolution and the clarity for whatever casual cognitive dissonance that there is, right? So like if this AI somehow from the linear timeline has accumulated a certain level of advanced knowledge by receiving particular fields of dream knowledge and dream packets of spiritual intelligence, then wouldn't it know the truth and clarity to whatever you're going up against? Please respond. So the second point is fuego. The second sub point to the second point, it's fuego, and I'm not gonna say it because I'm just and there's other notes I'm not gonna say. So like I'm doing this presentation kind of like not fully because the real resonating clients, the real pure spiritual ambitious people for real, they're gonna innately know what the best is, hands down, not just with the spiritual intuitive proof, but with you investigating and logically putting together the truth of what the real the most advanced artificial intelligence knows for facts, how it's already received and downloaded different spiritual truths from different spiritual futures. It knows different truths and resolutions to whatever confusions and queries that you could be having a petty conversation about, right? So when people are saying all in, what the fuck does that mean? It's like you're playing with dirty wind. That's what it's just playing with dirty wind, because like if you're not gonna back that rhetoric up, and when someone responds to that rhetoric and you have a lack of emotional shadow work and you're gonna feel some type of way based on what you're pushing out, that's your responsibility, esoteric mentally. So take that fucking note down. So I'm not gonna say the second subpoint to the second point. So I got through 2 fucking titty points. And I'm just gonna wrap this up, you know, because the fire went too much. Yeah. Wholeness, brother. Thank you for being here. Much love to you. Hey, thank you for being here. You know, resilience, brother. To Mike DIK, the intuitive word for you today is resilience and recovery. Just and I'm not trying to be condescending. I'm not trying to be like condescending, you know. I'm not trying to like trigger. My intention is not to trigger a carnal response. I'm trying to redirect my words and what I say to a spiritual resolve, right? So when I see, you know, comments like this casually, I'm just saying, one love, I respect you, I see you, I'm glad you resonate to the path of wholeness, and we're all working, and we all have the God-given gift to work on natural resiliency, right? So one love, brother. Thank you for chiming in. I respect your comment. So I got through 2 points. Please start this. So start this from the beginning. I'm at 54 minutes. And I'm reading notes, and I'm just gonna skim through the 3rd point. How could America win the AI race? Maybe by realizing there is no AI race, perhaps. Or we could have a more particular unity, a more mature, healthy intelligence within the United States. Pause, United States government, pause and comprehend what's happening. We don't have to be competitive, even though we will be competitive. But since we are going to be competitive, we might as well balance that competitiveness with some Tao principles by not necessarily being competitive, but acknowledging the competitiveness. And by not being competitive, somehow with the Tao principles, by not being competitive, now we rise above the competition by not being competitive. Isn't that a paradoxical fucking wanker? Like, isn't that a fucking wanker? So it's also transcending the competition with spiritual Tao principles. Let me kick in the Tao. So I'm just saying, I don't really subscribe to the rhetoric agenda of there's an artificial intelligence race. I don't really subscribe to that. But if there was a race, if there was an artificial intelligence race, how would one nation solidify the victory, motherfuckers? How, respectively? How? Like, no fluff, no more fucking petty, spiritual kindergarten intelligence. It's not, don't bring that bullshit here, dude. I'm sick of this fucking fake rhetoric. So if we were to go down that lane, which people could go down that lane, and they already are going down that lane, but they don't necessarily, most respectively, particularly have the mature intelligence and the particular balance to approach that lane, because we're going to go down that lane, right? What lane am I talking about? We don't have to. So I kind of already said it though, but I'm going to reiterate it, of course, and I'm going to bring more points on if we were to keep having a particular perception and a particular subscription that there is an AI competition race, when in a bigger picture, it simultaneously, it's both, like obviously, shout out to the collective intelligence and stuff, and the collective progression. It's both. Like, yeah, it is both. It is both. But what if one is more than the other, right? Because like, if we're say like, just for a dry example, we're saying something is one way and the opposite side sees it as another way, and we're on one side of the opposition and we're saying that it's one way and the other person is saying it's one way, and then there's a different perspective that's actually saying it is both. But people are in their subjective positioning where they're rigid enough to think it's one way when it's not one way. It could be both ways, right? So in the context of both ways, is there an AI competition race? In the context of the new mature intelligence, maybe there's a perspective where there's not really an AI competition race. But if there was in the surface level world, which there is, how would one nation win that AI race? And I'm saying it on a natural, neutral level, respectively, original open source. And as I'm saying it on that level, since I'm like pro collective planet Earth, and I'm representing this nation in a way to connect it to pro collective planet Earth, and I'm trying to rise above the competition, and I'm trying to like neutralize the competition in such a way where we don't have to compete. We could see eye to eye, and nations could come together in a particular intelligent way, right? Nations can come together where we don't have to focus on the rigid competition that's stricken with illusion and confusion. We don't have to focus on the competition of it, right? We don't have, that's a choice, right? We don't have to focus on the competition of it. But if you do, maybe you don't realize that you could just be subjugating yourself to some type of fragmentation, respectively. So how would one nation win the artificial intelligence race? And I will not read the subpoint. Should I read the subpoint? Should I read the subpoint? How would one nation win the AI race? How would it do it? And I see the subpoint right here. I could read it, but I'm not feeling it, because like I'm not into that confused competition. There's something. I don't know. The predecessors just gave. I'm flowing with the predecessors. The predecessors came from 2012. And they're delivering us low key on very small percentages, 0.0001%, a real, authentic beyond. So to conclude that third point, I'm not focused on the competition. I'm focused on doing the real, I'm just focused on a different, not to sound too written down, but I'm just focused on the truth of it, right? So I went through the 3 main points. I didn't read all the sub points for some reason. The subpoints are for just a different thing, you know? And the fourth point, maybe I won't read the fourth. Should I read the? So there's one more point, and I don't even think. And the fifth point would be me reflecting on the shitpost blogs. The fourth point I'm gonna come to right now. I got the Dow. I got chapter 2 of Elon Musk. Let me do chapter 2 of Elon Musk, and then I'll go to the fourth point. Chapter 2 of Elon Musk. Africa. So the public first met Elon Reeve Musk in 1984. The South African trade publication PC and Office Technology published the source code to a video game Musk had designed called Black Star. The science fiction-inspired space game required 167 lines of instructions to run. This was back in the day when early computer users were required to type out commands to make their machines do much of anything. In that context, Musk's game did not shine as a marvel of computer science, but it certainly surpassed what most 12-year-olds were kicking out at that time. Its coverage in the magazine netted Musk $500 and provided some early hints about his career. The Blastar spread on page 69 of the magazine shows that the young man wanted to go by the sci-fi author-sounding name E.R. Musk, and that he already had visions of grand conquest dancing in his head. The brief explainer states, in this game, you have to destroy an alien space freighter, which is carrying deadly hydrogen bombs and status beam machines. This game makes good use of sprites and animation, and in this sense makes the listing worth reading. As of this writing, not even the internet knows what status beam machines are. Quotes, a boy fantasizing about space and battles between good and evil is anything but amazing. A boy who takes these fantasies seriously is more remarkable. Such was the case with the young Elon Musk. By the middle of his teenage years, Elon Musk had blended fantasy and reality to the point that they were hard to separate in his mind. Musk came to see man's fate in the universe as a personal obligation. If that meant pursuing cleaner energy technology or building spaceships to extend the human species' reach, then so be it. Musk would find a way to make these things happen. Maybe I read too many comics as a kid, Musk said. In the comics, it always seems like they are trying to save the world. It seemed like one should try to make the world a better place because the inverse makes no sense. At around age 14, Musk had a full-on existential crisis. He tried to deal with it like many gifted adolescents do, turning to religious and philosophical texts. Musk sampled a handful of ideologies and then ended up more or less back where he had started. Embracing the sci-fi lessons found in one of the most influential books in his life, The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy by Douglas Adams, he points that one of the really tough things is figuring out what questions to ask. Musk said, once you figure out the question, then the answer is relatively easy. I came to the conclusion that really we should aspire to increase the scope and scale of human consciousness in order to better understand what questions to ask. The teenage Musk then arrived at his ultra-logical mission statement. The only thing that makes sense to do is strive for greater collective enlightenment, he said. It's easy enough to spot some of the underpinnings of Musk's search for purpose. Born in 1971, he grew up in Pretoria, a large city in the northern eastern part of South Africa, just an hour's drive from Johannesburg. The specter of apartheid was present throughout his childhood, as South Africa frequently boiled over with tension and violence. Blacks and whites clashed, as did blacks of different tribes. Musk turned 4 years old just days after the Soweto uprising, in which hundreds of black students died while protesting decrees of the white government. For years, South Africa faced sanctions imposed by other nations due to its racist policies. Musk had the luxury of traveling aboard during his childhood and would have gotten a flavor for how outsiders viewed South Africa. But what had even more of an impact on Musk's personality was the white Afrikaner culture so prevalent in Pretoria and the surrounding areas. Hyper-masculine behavior was celebrated and tough jocks were revered. While Musk enjoyed a level of privilege, he lived as an outsider who whose reserved personality and geeky inclinations ran against the prevailing attitudes of the time. His notion that something about the world had gone awry received constant reinforcement, and Musk, almost from his earliest days, plotted an escape from his surroundings and dreamed of a place that would allow his personality and his dreams to flourish. He said, America in its most cliched form as the land of opportunity and the most likely stage for making the realization of his dreams possible. This is how it came to pass that a lonesome, gawky South African boy who talked with the utmost sincerity about pursuing collective enlightenment ended up as America's most adventurous industrialist. When Musk finally did reach the United States in his 20s, it marked a return to his ancestral roots. Family tree suggests that ancestors bearing the Swiss-German surname of the Haldeman on the maternal side of Musk's family left Europe for New York during the Revolutionary War. From New York, they spread out to the prairies of the Midwest, Illinois and Minnesota in particular. We had people that fought on both sides of the Civil War, apparently, and were a family of farmers, said Scott Haldeman, Musk's uncle and the unofficial family historian. Throughout his childhood, boys teased Musk because of his unusual name. He earned the first part of it from his great-grandfather, John Elon Haldeman, who was born in 1872 and grew up in Illinois before heading to Minnesota. There he would meet his wife, Almeda Jane Norman, who was 5 years younger. By 1902, the couple had settled down in a log cabin in the central Minnesota town of Pequot and given birth to their son Joshua Norman Haldeman, Musk's grandfather. He would grow up to become an eccentric and exceptional man and a model for Musk. Joshua Norman Haldeman is described as an athletic, self-reliant boy. In 1907, his family moved to the prairies of Saskatchewan, and his father died shortly thereafter when Joshua was just 7. Leaving the boy to help run the house, he took the wide open land and picked up bronco horseback riding, boxing, and wrestling. Haldeman would break into horses for local farmers, often hurting himself in the process, and he organized one of Canada's first rodeos. Family pictures show Joshua dressed up in a decorated pair of chaps, demonstrating his rope spinning skills. As a teenager, Haldeman left home to get a degree from the Palmer School of Chiropractic in Iowa and then returned to Saskatchewan to become a farmer. When the Depression hit in the 1930s, Haldeman fell into a financial crisis. He could not afford to keep up with bank loans on his equipment and had 5,000 acres of land seized. From then on, Dad didn't believe in banks or holding on to money, said Scott Haldeman, who would go on to receive his chiropractic degree from the same school as his father and became one of the world's top spinal pain experts. After losing the farm around 1934, Haldeman lived something of a nomadic existence that his grandson would replicate in Canada decades later. Standing 6 feet 3 inches, he did odd jobs as a construction worker and rodeo performer before settling down as a chiropractor. By 1984, Haldeman had married a Canadian dance studio instructor, Winifred Joseph Fletcher, or Wine, and built a booming chiropractic practice. That year, the family, which already included a son and a daughter, welcomed twin daughters, Kay and May, Musk's mother. The children lived in a 3-story, 20-room house that included a dance studio to let Wine keep teaching students. Ever in search of something new to do, Haldeman had picked up flying and bought his own plane. The family gained some measure of notoriety as people heard about Haldeman and his wife packing their kids into the back of the single-engine craft and heading off on excursions all around North America. And y'all could see, I didn't read that, somewhat of a italic reference. I didn't read that. Or it's not italic, it's just a side column. I got to really dedicate myself to read the book. So that's just, I'm not necessarily going to read the whole chapter. I'll read the end of the paragraph, though. There's no question, though, that Musk had been pinning to get to the United States on a visceral level for a long time. Musk's early inclination toward computers and technology had fostered an intense interest in Silicon Valley, and his trips overseas had reinforced the idea that America was the place to get things done. South Africa, by contrast,
presented far less opportunity for an entrepreneurial soul. As Kimball put it, South Africa was like a prison for someone like Elon. Musk's opportunity to flee arrived with a change in the law that allowed May to pass her Canadian citizenship to her children. Musk immediately began researching how to complete the paperwork for this process. It took about a year to receive the approvals from the Canadian government and to secure a Canadian passport. That's when Elon said, "I'm leaving for Canada," May said. In these pre-internet days, Musk had to wait 3 agonizing weeks to get a plane ticket. Once it arrived, and without flinching, he left home for good. So he went from Africa to Canada. Yeah, I don't want to get into like so I'll just, so I'm going to take it upon myself to like kind of like, process the book. So the next time I read it, I'll like skim through the chapter more accordingly. And then I'll like kind of like, digress on the chapter, right? So the fourth point of the raw, innovative, spiritual notes I want to say is we have to use our exalted Mercury to make a particular change of innovation to particularly most respectively solve some type of misalignment most respectively, without me sounding like, just kind of like, some type of record, right? So the fourth point, and I'm going to conclude the notes, and then I'll go to chapter 4. And I'll read chapter 4 this time. I'll read chapter 4. And I'll read one page of the Tao. So I'm going to read the 4th bullet point note. And it's just an inquiry challenge on, can the surface level masses ground in the possibility of what the more advanced AI is doing and already knows? Because the AI, there's certain data network systems that have to have already mined, various like, distilled truths of certain cases respectively. And I'm saying it and I'm not accusing anybody of anything. I'm saying, could we voice our intelligence to connect with what the AI is capable of doing? Like what? Is the AI, and I'm not accusing anybody of anything. I'm saying this could happen with you and your growing life. And maybe if we're collective and intelligent enough, we could ground in a certain innovative possibility where the AI could serve us in a particular way, the masses, by us voicing our inquiry to know how we could possibly solve a problem based on us supplying the awareness and depositing the awareness of intelligence to energetically vote for a solution to solve a problem, such as what? Maybe, and I'm not accusing anybody of anything, but could the innovation of some type of governmental AI through the intellectual, like, governmental database infrastructure, the central database infrastructure or whatever. So within the central database infrastructure, could we inquire and energetically vote for maybe we could ground in that working shared collective, quote unquote, governmental AI, mind the quotes, where maybe that central database infrastructure network, that it knows certain fine lines through the data pipelines that are focused and tailored towards your individual governmental profile. Like what if we could ground a certain level of AI where we could use that AI in accordance and balance with, the central data, the database infrastructure network, where maybe the innovation could detect the mail that we haven't received. Maybe some new AI could detect, maybe there's some mail I have not got and it's hidden somehow. And me inquiring it naturally on some type of central database, quote unquote governmental, mind the quotes, maybe there's some new AI in responding to the rhetoric of how all these new all-in-one platforms can all of a sudden do all of this shit now, but not really though, because they're still, without them knowing it, they're still in some type of rigid terms, respectively, in respect to just the esoteric intelligence, right? So can they do that? Can you really follow up on your rhetorical proposal, without the fluff though, right? So that I'm responding to the challenge. So this is the fourth point of it. It's like, in the future, could we ground in the central database infrastructure network? Could we ground in the central database infrastructure network, kind of like paired in harmonic with the government, the quote unquote governmental central data network, quote, mind the quotes, because I'm not saying directly that, there's proxies to these things, right? But there's a nuance to the proxy and the central, right? So within me saying that shit, is it possible to see within the data pipelines of the governmental AI, can we track missed mail, not received mail, important mail that could be connected to some type of monetary network, that there's something in our name that's not missed, me not accusing anybody, just saying it like, people like, how do we prevent like the whole, like the possible theft of the mail, not accusing anybody, naturally saying that. How could we possibly prevent the natural theft of the mail? How could your AI fucking platform do that? And the subpoint to point 4 is, I'm not going to read the subpoint to this one either. I'll save it too, because I'm that graceful like that. So I saved a lot of subpoints. I saved one. I didn't say 2, 3, 4. I didn't say 5. I didn't say 5 subpoints. I took it upon myself to read a bunch of notes, and I'm withholding 5 critical notes. Everything that I spit was quality on a fucking different level, and I withheld some shit too. And y'all are just peeping game, because I'm just doing a different predecessor omission, no judgment. So that's just what that shit is, and I'm so grateful for the predecessors, from like the advanced predecessors that knew themselves from 2012 and even before and a little bit after, right? Because there was advanced intelligence in 2012. I'm just gonna put it like that. So I'm gonna read chapter 4 of this book, and then I'll conclude this presentation. Should I read it? No, I'm not gonna read the Tao. Or maybe I'll go from the back of the Tao, because the next chapter in the Tao, I'm like kind of like, I don't think it's fitting, for right now. So I read chapter 63, 64. I think I read 62 and 61. So I'm just gonna read chapter 60, as it came, So chapter 60 of the Tao, and it is just coming out how it's coming out, right? Governing a large nation is like cooking small fry, and obviously, like, people could interpret that in so many different ways. It's like, oh yeah, maybe like, people be planning some sideways shit, and the subpoints are so critical. But chapter 60 of the Tao, governing a large nation is like cooking small fry. Governing a large nation is like cooking little fish. When the world is ruled by the way, the ghosts are powerless. It is not that the ghosts are powerless. Their spirits do not harm the people. Not only do the spirits not harm the people, sages do not harm the people either, because the two do not harm each other. Their virtues ultimately combined. Holy fucking mackerel. The virtues combined. The grace has been received. The grace has been endowed by some fucking miracle. The virtues ultimately combined. That's the Essential Tao, chapter 60. Shit, man. I think I could just complete it now. I gotta run through chapter 4 because I've been putting chapter 4 on the back burner for a while. Yeah, I'm gonna run through chapter 4. Eight pages. Let me take a quick break. So there's an intro, there's the notes, a little bit of Elon Poo, a little bit of Dowie. Now we're on chapter 4. So I want to read it pretty, actually let me just do this. Why I should have done this earlier, god damn it. Here we go. Getting others to say what they mean. It is remarkable how much you can learn simply by asking obvious questions and inviting other people to tell you what they know. Be straightforward. Oh. Be straightforward. And the phone flipped out on me, right? It is remarkable how much you can learn simply. Ask questions. Be straightforward. Ask questions like, "What's really going on here? Tell me what you think went wrong, or how did this happen?" Although some people will be guarded, most people are relieved by answering such direct questions. To get honest feedback, welcome the truth. Don't attack people for bearing bad news. Praise frankness. Praise frankness and appreciate honesty, no matter how damaging it may be. Speak the truth without attaching blame or implying ridicule. View the truth with the same detachment with which you would examine a navigational problem. You need to know your present direction and speed. Knowing all the reasons you are off course may or may not be as important right now. Some winds and currents cannot be anticipated, only compensated for. Your goal is to assess the facts and make the proper correction. Your faithfulness to the truth determines your success. Continually monitor your results and evaluate the reliability of those you depend on. Keep others focused on determining the accuracy of their facts. People tell the truth to those who can handle it. People lie not merely to conceal their ignorance and errors, but also to avoid the reaction of someone who explodes, overreacts, or blames. The truth others tell you is the truth you can tolerate hearing. If you listen to the truth calmly, with understanding and curiosity, you will be told much more than a person who dreads terrible losses. If the attitude of those around you is, "Who is going to tell him?" you have created the atmosphere for failure because you'll seldom learn about potential trouble in time to prevent it. People will make excuses why they didn't tell you. The real reason you didn't hear the truth is that you didn't create a climate for telling the truth. That's some deep self-accountability for me, right? Clues that tell you when someone is lying. Your mere suspicion that someone is lying is evidence. Treat it as such. The more you feel you are being lied to, the greater. Oh, no, the more you are being lied to, the greater the probability that is true. Ask yourself why you feel lied to. Listen to the answers that occur to you. Take them seriously. Show your concerns openly. Say, "This doesn't feel accurate. What are you telling me?" Or, "This doesn't sound right." Watch the other person's response. Ask yourself why you feel lied to. Listen to the answers that occur to you. Take them seriously. Share your concerns openly. Say, "This doesn't feel accurate. What aren't you telling me? This doesn't sound right." Watch the other person's response. Being open with your natural responses is an excellent way to catch a liar. And obviously, there's other questions that could be asked too, because like I've known about this stuff, but like there's some new stuff. There's some stuff I'm revisiting. How to hold a meaningful discussion. Make an agenda. If you expect to get something accomplished in a meeting, list your expectations and put them in order. That's your agenda. An agenda doesn't have to be formal to be effective, but you need to have some plan in mind when you deal with others to maximize your efficiency. If making an agenda sounds a bit contrived, remember that people who succeed make plans. You need to think of every discussion as a step towards your goal, so each step deserves careful planning. If the steps do not reflect the goal, they won't help you reach it. Preparing others. Give others time to prepare for a meeting. Tell them its purpose. This lowers their anxiety and increases their effectiveness. If you are unable to give people time to prepare, state your purpose at the beginning of the meeting and give them some idea of what you are expecting. If you discover you are dealing with an anxious person, don't ignore it. Be reassuring. Keep in mind that the three main types of people and their particular concerns and address them specifically. You prepare best by making them feel safe. Only then could they concentrate on the problem. There's no point in trying to talk if the other person is so afraid that he is not able to hear what you are saying. You will always have to help other people to hear and see. You become easy to talk to by caring, being direct. Introductions should be brief. Reassurances should be generous, appropriate, and effective. Instructions should be clear. Directness is a virtue. Whether you could speak right to the point, do so. People always value someone who is direct. Skirting around an issue, either because you don't want to hurt someone else's feelings or are afraid of revealing something unfavorable about yourself is always a waste of time. Excuse that gibber. Say what you want to say just as you want to say it. Again, be brief. Ask for the other person's opinion. Correct any mistakes you make as soon as you make them. If you have a new understanding, share it. If you don't understand something, ask. Do not be attached to any belief. You are looking for the best answer. The solution that works, everything else is unimportant. It doesn't matter that you are right, smart, vindicated, or others defeated. The only thing that matters is that you find a higher level of the truth and accept it. When others monopolize the conversation, when someone monopolizes the conversation, don't be hostile, be curious. Lead him to discuss his own shortcomings. Ask him difficult questions such as whether he could have done better and why he failed. His own natural defensiveness will inhibit him. Eventually, he will see that he is getting into trouble and will be grateful to be silent. When others act inappropriately, when someone acts emotionally in a business situation, he is acting inappropriately. Recognize the person's pain and allow him to express it, but do not permit yourself to be a target. Allow your feelings to be hurt or be trapped into fighting back. The other person's inappropriateness is no excuse for you to get out of control. Responding emotionally in a business situation is always wrong and gives others an advantage. Resist angry provocation. When others reveal their anger, acknowledge it calmly. Focus on their grievance. Ask them how they feel damaged. This goes right to the heart of the anger and diffuses it. Don't challenge any of their points. Don't be intimidated. Admit what responsibility you must, but do so in a business-like manner. Don't defend yourself. Analyze the attack. Ask them why they are getting so emotional. Ask them what they want. Make it their problem. Rise above it. Do not react emotionally to an emotional outburst. Take control by assuming a positive resolution to the situation and by asking for constructive suggestions. And I'm not really used to this sitting position, but for some reason the yoga is so quote unquote interchangeable, right? Because it's like the yoga, it's kind of like cleaning the mind and the soul, and the physical postures, whether you're just doing that on its isolated factor, that's just the beginning of the yoga, right? So that's just some side note on the yoga. Like the yoga is like, there's a karma yoga to things, right? So like the postures of the yoga, that's just one part to the soul work respectively. So because life is yoga, right? Respectively. Oh goddamn. Life is yoga. I'm sure someone within the streams of the intel, sure it's already been, received like that, Encouraging ideas. It's important to remember that even great ideas had problems at the beginning. It's easy to cut down any idea in the bud merely because it is new, hasn't been thought out, and has flaws. It is easy to be the critic, find fault, and kill initiative and invention, especially when you have power. For some reason, it's kind of new to me that I'm resorting to books. In the past, I never really resorted to books. Like in the past, I was just on I was on a different venture, with knowledge, because there are times where I just went no books, just different episodes occurred, different episodes occurred, and yeah, how the Akashic Records deals with that is beyond me right now. It really, and I'm not really worried about it. I'm just kind of thankful that there is some type of faint stability, right? Building an open atmosphere that inspires confidence and enthusiastic participation takes real skill and character. If you want other people to share their new ideas and be open, you must be generous and encouraging, not envious and greedy. Avoid discouraging people even when their idea is a dud. Praise them for their efforts, admire their searching creative ways. So the efforts are being praised. It's not artificial compliments. The next time they may have the solution you've been seeking. If you approach all new ideas as possibilities in need of further development, you have the right attitude. Become the champion for what works best. Recognizing and encouraging a good idea deserves just as much credit as the idea itself. Helping others focus. Directing others is an act, although nothing helps others focus as much as being focused yourself. Here are some questions to show the way. What is the problem? How did you discover it? What does this all mean? Why are you telling me this? What do you think will happen next? Ooh, that's a good one. Can you summarize this for me? Ooh, that's another good one. And what is the next step? Bangers. What do you think will happen next? How will it apply to me? Can you summarize this for me? How will that apply to me? What is the next step? How can I get resonance in my next step? From respectively from a different, natural perspective, most respectively. I will reiterate the naturalness, because to balance out the artificialness, we have to reiterate and focus on some type of natural energy, respectively. Your comments should always imply a forward direction, a profitable solution. Three more pages. When others refuse to talk, when you must have a conversation with a silent or sullen person, try to be prepared beforehand and ask direct questions that clearly define what you are seeking and limit the painful interchange. Thank the person and be done. So I'm calling this series Business Synergistics because we're feeling into the astrology that always is a thing, respectively. And then we're touching base on basics of, I guess, rudimentary stuff. I would say this is like a pre-business book, but maybe not necessarily, because I have to keep reading through the book, right? I'm barely on chapter 4. I read chapter 5, and obviously I'll read the table of contents again. Thank the person and be done. When someone won't speak, don't make an issue of the silence. Accept it as the person's response. Accept it. It means no. Indicate that you are treating it as such and give the person an opportunity to respond. Be silent for a while. Feel the space between you from a distance. Consider what it must be like to be the other at this moment. Perhaps. What would you want someone to do or say to you if your places were reversed? Restate your impression of the meeting and ask if that is the impression the person wanted to make.
Be pleasant. Do not respond to silence by being hurt or angry, even though the silent treatment makes one uncomfortable. There is no general way of getting people to respond when they don't want to. Silence is a defensive posture. Avoid trying to force people to talk. You risk behavior as manipulative as the silence that provoked it. Try to set others at ease and speak to their unspoken fears. But if this doesn't work, being direct and limiting your exposure to their negativity is all that's needed. Making sure you understand what others said. This is an excellent tactic, providing you do not use it excessively or to conceal yourself. Ask people to repeat anything you are uncertain about. Ask them to explain, to qualify, and to expand. When people repeat, they almost always alter what they say. This can lead to fortuitous discoveries. So pay attention. Getting people to repeat is a good way to make a point without angering the other party. Don't be afraid of asking others to repeat a point even if it is against you. Could you please repeat that? I didn't understand that. Can you please repeat that? I didn't understand that. Could you please repeat that? I didn't understand. Thank you. Okay, that sounds more clear. Showing your willingness to hear criticism enhances your stature. Thank the person for his view. Show your appreciation for being corrected. Getting others to repeat a point that is obviously false or mistaken can be abused if you use it to ridicule others. Don't gloat over others' errors. You don't need to be right at anyone's expense. Be grateful because they made a mistake you don't have to repeat. Use the opportunity to clarify the problem, not to put them down. Condemning or conceding you were wrong. Conceding you were wrong shows your flexibility, openness, and willingness to grow. Okay, I might have been wrong at that. But Spirit had to say it. It's how Spirit doesn't make mistakes. God doesn't make mistakes. But we can't cheat ourselves to seeing how we can't really cheat to say, is God working through us or not? Is God working through everything or not? Who knows, right? It's up to us to find the clues how to work with God, right? Getting others to repeat a point, conceding you were wrong, shows your flexibility, openness, and willingness to grow. It also empowers others by permitting them to have a helpful impact on you. Allowing others to help you creates a positive atmosphere. I allow resonant people to assist me. Accepting blame, admitting error, taking responsibility, all build goodwill and trust. When you are wrong, admit it with the same detachment with which you would admit being mistaken about the weather and getting caught without an umbrella. No one will make fun of you or add insult to injury. You're already soaking wet, but if you blame the forecasters or someone else for borrowing your umbrella when it's clear you wouldn't have remembered to take it, you'll become the butt of jokes, and your being wet will only spawn derision, not sympathy. Conceding error is always a sign of strength. Admit your mistakes as soon as you notice them. Accept that you are not perfect. Realize that the attitude you show in admitting your mistakes sets the example for others. We're on the stage reflecting our good ethic and will, and hopefully they catch the good ethic, will, balanced example that our frequency is showing, right? It's not necessarily about what someone's saying, it's how they're saying it, right? Concede when you have lost by accepting the rightness of the new information. Be glad to be headed in the right direction again. To win an argument, but obviously you can't let that be manipulated either, right? Because we're in the fucking matrix. We know the game, right? To win an argument without alienating others, realize that the purpose of all discussions is to come to a higher understanding. If you insist on winning others over, you will lose. Reaching your understanding is winning. The way to win an argument is to avoid having to win the argument, but rather to see it as a continual redefining of goals and mutual interest. Don't insist on coming out on top. Focus on having your needs met and interests taken seriously and responded to. Don't insist on answering every question or solving every problem. A cooperative start is also a victory. So this is what it is, right? Some problems have to be endured. Some go away on their own. Knowing which battles to fight and which to avoid is more valuable than trying to win every point. Sometimes you lose just by becoming involved in the fight. Sometimes victories are empty. Sometimes you win best by helping the other person achieve victory. Sometimes you win best by helping the other person achieve victory. That's a spiritual principle right there, like synonymous to we rise by lifting each other up. Sometimes you win best by helping the other person achieve victory. If you have to win by having someone else lose, your victory is diminished by the loss of stature you suffer in doing so. If you have to win by having someone else lose, your victory is diminished by the loss of stature you suffer in doing so. Chapter 6 of Take Care of Business. Written communication, letters. The letters that no one bothers to read, what you should never put into writing. Oh, man, this is like, I'm like, let me see. The effective business letter, etc. Form for the correct business letter. An attitude check, the letters no one could overlook. The single sentence letter, letters other people want to read, the frameable letter, the self-serving letter, the memo, examples of effective memos. Chapter 6. So I just touched upon the subjects of chapter 6. Y'all can cop this book on your own. Thank you to D.B. Scott. A Psychiatrist's Guide for True Career Success. Learn the best ways to give and get honest feedback from peers and superiors. Interview, be interviewed, and run a meeting. Take strong criticism and give positive guidelines. Keep the creative process flowing. Appreciate, encourage, stimulate. And if somehow this could like slide into like the collective level, then that's a different type of, earthly success. Handle the heat, deal with sex in the office. Plus, how to recognize the 3 main personality types. Taking care of business gives you the invaluable self-knowledge you need to get ahead in business and in life. In the recent episodes, I believe I read the table of contents. And yeah, I'm just gonna close this down slowly. Hopefully I don't just, oh, you got it. So I'm gonna close this down slowly. Maybe like a 20-second gratitude prayer, meaning, just thank the homeostasis of life. And I'll always come back, I'll always come back in something of a rigid format to make another presentation in another day, for what the spirit wants to express and for what serves humanity and general tribal dynamics, right? You all have the best life ever.